everyone. Welcome back to the Mashtia podcast. I am Anna.
I am Juliana.
And today we're going to talk about a topic that's deeply personal and interesting for me, which is like if you've seen the episode title, it's like, I have an idea. Now what? And the reason why I really wanted to talk about this because like I often wonder that in my own life, but just in general, I feel like even when I listen to stories of, entrepreneurs or, people who are very successful, sometimes you only get to hear like the highlights of their life, but sometimes you don't hear like the nitty gritty. And I really like to hear the nitty gritty, like, okay, you started a business, but like how?
Yeah.
Where did your idea come from? Like where did you write it down? How did you navigate the administrative process to register your business? Like, I want to know the nitty gritty. Or even when you hear some people who will like have very lofty titles, like job titles, like, director of culture and vision or something like that. I'm like,
Chief Vision Officer.
yeah. And I'm like, okay, but you sit down on your desk and do what? So I'm always very interested in the nitty gritty. And I think with projects, it's very similar. And that's probably one of the reasons why I also went into developing my project management, I guess, career or knowledge, just in like really wanting to understand, like after the birth of an idea, what happens? Like, what do we actually need to do on paper? What are the steps? What are the deliverables that we need to, come up with or execute in order to make an idea a reality? And of course, like within this topic, it's like so interesting because everyone, although there's like systems and theories and methods, I feel like, the personal also comes into this so much. And it's just like every person really approaches them in a different way. And so I just wanted to like kind of hash out what it was like for us, what's our process from like our subjective standpoint. Of course, you can Google this and a million suggestions will come up, templates, plans,
Monday.com.
Exactly, just like everything, sponsored software, like just everything will come up. But it's like from our experience, like we have an idea and then what do we do with it? What do you do with it?
So for me, it really depends because there are so many different types of ideas, right? There's ideas that can be immediately acted upon, and there's ideas that need a little bit more rehatching. For me, generally, if I have an idea that's like big and that I need either funding or it's like, it's gonna change my life. But like if I continue to pursue that, generally, honestly, and I'm being really honest, I get overwhelmed just thinking about it and then I don't do anything about it. I'll just like too much. I have to think about this for too long. I'm just going to I had this idea. It's in my mind, but I'm just so overwhelmed that I'm just gonna leave it there.
Yeah.
But then when I have ideas that are more, say I have an idea for a I don't know, a piece of music, or I have an idea for a photo, or I have an idea for like, generally I'll just like something like that. Generally I'll write it down. I have like a note on my phone, on my notes app, where I write down all my ideas, and then I will, if I can't act upon it immediately, I'll write it down, and then I'll remember to check back, and I check that document like every week.
I was gonna ask, like, do you actually go back to it, or they just live there?
No, I do go back because sometimes like I feel like I'm having, like I'm very privileged to be able to do freelance work and to be able to manage my own time. So because of that, then I usually have time to do things because I manage my own time. So if I get things done quick, and if I'm not like really busy with projects, I'm having a beer and it's kind of beering, if I'm not really busy with projects or I have time, then I'll go back to my document and see if there's anything I can do. Like, for example, today actually I was kind of between projects and I was feeling a little bogged down with one of the projects, and I was like, I need to do something different. So I went back to my document and I started looking at some ideas that we have had, and I even send you links and things. It's like I do research and whatever, but then I have that document there that I refer back to when I need a little bit of a break. But I don't want to sit down and do nothing or doom scroll. I want to like still keep my brain active. I was gonna say be productive, but not necessarily. I just want to keep my brain active. So yeah, I write it down. If I cannot act upon it, I'll act upon it immediately. For example, if I have a good idea for a photo, I generally have like a Pinterest board or of things that I like, and then I'm like, oh, I want to recreate this photo that's kind of like this, kind of like that. Like my husband and I went to Edinburgh in November of last year, and I had a whole bunch of photos that I wanted to take because I'd seen kind of similar photos on Instagram and on Pinterest. So I kept a board, and then when we got to Edinburgh, then I was very intentional with like the shots that I wanted to take and things like that. But then I kind of act upon it in ways that I research. Like if I see an idea for like a music thing, and I want to create a particular sound, then I research. If I don't know how to do it, then I'll research like how do I make this happen?
Right.
What do others do? I listen to things and to compare what I want to do with, not necessarily as a guiding point, because then it's very easy to like stick to doing the thing you listen to, but
Yeah.
like to kind of have an idea. And then I said I do it and I finish it. But and you're probably gonna relate to this. I'm very like addicted to the feeling of having a new idea.
Yeah.
But I find it really difficult to get it across the finish line, and that's why I easily get overwhelmed with ideas, especially if it's things that are little that are not gonna have any major significance. If I think about it for too long, it'll overwhelm me, and then I'll because I feel like I'm never ready to act on it, so then I just won't do it.
Yeah.
I don't have the right lens, or I don't have the right instrument, or I don't have the like expertise and knowledge, and then I just kind of it paralyzes me, and I don't get anything done.
Yeah.
So, but that feeling of like getting something new is kind of exciting for me. So yeah, I don't know how to. Sometimes I find it difficult, and this is a good question to ask because then it gets me thinking. I find it difficult to actually get ideas to the finish line.
Right.
Like
yeah.
I start it and I'll do research and I'll like do preliminary work and then I stop there because I get overwhelmed with what it takes to get it across the finish line, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I can totally relate. And if you saw our episode on like the different iterations that Mashtia has gone through, like that's probably partly it. I mean, on the flip side, I do see, because one thing that I really love about ideas, and I've said this on here before, I'm a very ideas driven person. And so of course I thrive in that phase as well, is where I find like most of the drive is in like the idea generation process, I guess. But one thing I like about ideas is they're very much things that are alive, if I could say it like that without sounding too mystical.
Yeah.
Because but I do think that of course, like at some point the idea generation process needs to stop and you need to commit to something. Just full disclosure, like we had started recording yesterday and we had technical issues, so we're repeating some of the things, but I kind of really like this. But I said it like an architect, like while you're sketching, you can have a million ideas and you can change your mind and you can add a curvature there or change the layout of this there. But once the building is like half built, like you can't change your mind at that point anymore. Or, you know, at some point, a song, a book or whatever, like even if you keep having ideas throughout the process, you need to commit to one and like do it, of course. And so, but one of the things that I like about ideas is the fact that precisely because they're alive, they can evolve and change. And so, like, for example, with a project like ours, without becoming too like self-referential, but I think that like one of the beautiful things is that even though we haven't, quote unquote, finished or seen an idea to its full fruition, with the exception of the seminar, which we talked about in that episode, in case you haven't listened. I think it's episode 10.
Yeah.
Like it's the fact that we have also changed or sometimes have had to take like a bit of a hiatus and whatnot. It's because precisely that idea was continued to be shaped and formed and, you know, like was still morphing and we're still finding exactly what it is we wanted. But of course, like as I just said, like you get to a point where, okay, morphing time is kind of over. Obviously, there's always room for a little bit of change, like on things that aren't static, like even businesses change, like brands change, like, you know, whatever. There are certain like areas and aspects where we'll keep changing, like we'll keep having ideas for this project, and maybe like, you know, the way we do things in 6 months is going to be very different than when we do it now, or even we envisioned it when we first met to chat about it. But I do think that at some point there is a part where you're like, okay, action is needed, and that part, it's really hard.
Yeah, and there's some ideas that, because you were saying that and it kind of got me thinking, there's some ideas that don't require, that have no finish lines, and those are really exciting. Like this project, for example, like we're not doing something that has like beginning, middle, end.
A deadline, right?
You know, like there's no deadline, but which can be a challenge, but also can be a blessing. The challenge is that if you don't have a deadline and you don't have someone over you kind of ruling over your time, then it's hard to get things done. But at the same time, you have the flexibility to, the ideas are more granular, I guess, in a way. Like you have an idea for a video, you have an idea for a topic, or you have, so you can get that like satisfaction and that like dopamine boost of like, oh, I had the idea for the video, I shot the video, I edited the video, I posted the video. That's the span of that idea that lives within the big idea. So having projects like this, or having kind of like life projects. I guess for me, it really helps me to get ideas across the finish line because I know that I'm accountable to you and accountable to our supporters to get things done. And then that way, like the more ideas I get done, the more ideas I get because
Yeah.
I think it's a cycle that fits itself, you know?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that, in terms of that, like if we're talking about, projects and like ideas for projects, I think one of the like really nice things is that, oh my gosh, I totally lost my train of thought. But I think the really nice thing is that like there's a variety of the ideas that you can have, and that really the now what part will like truly depend. And I think that one of the reasons why I love chasing ideas so much, or not chasing, but like, and this is like I guess the mythical part about ideas as well, where like some people truly think that you can chase them. Some people think that ideas are just like kind of floating in the air and you catch them. Some people think that ideas come to you. You're just about living and they come in. And no one really knows, to a scientific degree, what ideas are, in terms of like substance. They're obviously intangible and every person works them in different ways. Some people argue that you just get them when they come to you in a very like almost spiritual way when they need to. And some other people are like, no, you have to work at becoming better at idea generator. And I think that, might come down to character and personality and whatnot and preference. But the thing is that like there's different types of ideas for the different types of projects that we might want to pursue. And I think that the beauty of it is that like maybe the way that you approach idea generation and also like what to do afterwards might be very different or might look very different for like a work project where you have more perhaps defined constraints as opposed to just an idea that you have for your own creative endeavors, right? And like the things you're doing at the side, like when you were saying with your photography, it's like, I'm seeing these things, I'm getting inspiration from all these different sources. So then like, let me imagine what this like a picture from this angle would look. Let me chase that light, and of course you're gonna action it, but like even then now what will be a little bit perhaps freer, or it will be very different than like you're having a client meeting and they're like, we kind of want to revamp our brand but we don't know what we want to do you have any ideas? And then you may have ideas but it will already be within this like kind of framework. And
I think I actually kind of love, I don't necessarily love it. No, let me reword that. I thrive with the constraints, which is why I feel like for people like me, and maybe some other people will relate, I need to create those constraints for myself. Because if I don't, then I get overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Like if I have like all of the possibilities in the world, I get overwhelmed. So my constraints with photography, for example, is I love film photography. That's a constraint.
Yeah.
Because you don't have, well, first of all, you have a limited a limited amount of frames that you can take per roll of film. So you can't try to get the photo a million times. You need to get it in the first or second try, or then you're literally wasting money. Second of all, I have the gear that I have, and I'm not going to spend money buying more gear because as much as I want to, I won't, because like that's what I have. So, that's kind of like, so that's another constraint. And then the constraints are that I putting myself with like the spaces and the environments that I want to photograph, like trying to make these things work with what I have in the spaces that I have with the amount of shots that I have on my roll. And so that kind of and it works. Like when I develop a roll, maybe about half of the roll are things that I'm actually really proud of, and the other half is like trial and error.
Right.
But it still helps me get more ideas within the constraints, and I feel like when I have those constraints, I get more ideas. I don't know if I make them or I catch them or whatever, but like I get more ideas because I don't know. For me personally, which we've talked about our need for play before. I need that flexibility in my mind, but I also feel like if I have the freedom to think about anything and everything, I will get overwhelmed.
Yeah.
So those constraints help me stay focused in my craft and stay focused in what I want to do. And that's why I think I thrive at work, honestly, because when I have a client and the client has a set of constraints that keep me within the box, and I try to maximize and push those boundaries as much as I can, but also use those to my advantage.
Yeah.
And I get so many great ideas because I can see it. I can see what I can do with what I have, you know? Yeah, it's like analysis paralysis. When you go to the store and you try to choose a cereal and there's like a million cereals and you're like, oh my gosh. So it's like similar. It's like, sorry, ambulance. The wonders of living in the city. Yeah. But yeah, it's that, it's the... yeah, I don't know. I just like having constraints. I think it
Right.
just makes me a better creative and a better at executing ideas. I think.
Yeah, I think for me, it's like, it depends. If I am asked to like contribute ideas, or even if I have an idea at work, I think I appreciate the constraints to an extent, because it gives me a clearer direction. Of course, we've already talked about it in our rules and guidelines episode. I'm not a fan, but I also understand, like, I'm an adult, and I understand that
I'm
I
an
will
adult.
have constraint, as much as I want to, run away from it. I am an adult now. And like, I understand that there will be environments where I will have constraints, and it's not only like work. If I'm volunteering at the church, for example, and I'm asked to contribute ideas, I'm gonna still have constraints. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's an idea for an activity or something. It will be with the people we invite or something. Like, you know what I mean? Or
Budget,
like,
whatever.
with budget. It will be a church activity, so it like there will be. But so I do try to fulfill my need for that absolute vastness of no constraints on my own, because I do think that it's where I thrive more. And as we've talked about, actually, like, doing that on the side really refuels me to even have better ideas for the situations where I do have those constraints. But I do need to, like, well, I guess, kind of exercise
Yeah.
in a way that idea generation in that complete, like, blue sky environment on my own. One of the ways that I do that, as I've said, is like with my writing. But then I do establish my own, I guess, constraints as well, in the sense that, like, once I've decided what I'm going to write about, I'm not going to do like a full stream of consciousness writing. That would be like my dream. But I know no one will like read it. I don't know.
Very few people get away with that.
Yes,
Like, very
very-
few authors have got
Yeah,
away
yeah,
with
yeah,
that.
yeah. So I still need to like write about something, and then I'll
Yeah.
start establishing like the theme and whatnot. But my mind will start with like a complete,
Yeah.
like, blue sky.
Yeah, and I think there's a beauty in, I think people, those that have gone before us and created the rules for us, are very wise, because I think there's a beauty in the rules, and in knowing what you can do within those rules. And then once you have the discipline, and once you've honed your skill and honed your craft, you can just be like, you know what, screw the rules.
Yeah.
And then you can write your stream of consciousness.
Yeah.
But it's like, you can't break the rules if you don't know the rules. So it's kind of like, and yeah, of course, we all have. I think I also have a need to just have that vast train of thought,
Yeah.
which I explore in different other ways. Like, for me, it's like, I straight up just thinking, or walking, or going to therapy. Actually, like, you
Yeah.
know, those things like actually do help me in continuing to think within the constraints of the things that I make. But yeah, I think there's a beauty in the rules, because they help you stay in the path of finishing the project. You know, once you start it. But yeah, then there's a point when once you're established, and you're, an established author, an established musician, even when you're not, you can still experiment outside of the rules, because some people don't even know the rules, and they great things.
Yeah.
But then yeah, there's value in knowing those rules so that you can break them after. Yeah.
Totally. But now, kind of to get to that nitty gritty that we talked about at the beginning. Say you have an idea that you have decided to act upon. You have it. You selected it. You sit at your desk and you do what?
I don't know, man. It's such a hard question. I'm trying to think of a specific. Yeah, I think I start with research.
Okay.
Like, I like knowing what others have done. Again, not to copy them, but to know, and I think there's nothing new under the sun. So, like, knowing what others have done, and getting that, like, reference, I think for me is really helpful. So I start there. I'll say I'm gonna break down like a music project, for
Okay.
example, like
Yeah.
the Seawall, which we've posted. It's on
Yes.
Spotify, and wherever you can listen to music, it's there. And we also have a link on our Instagram, I think, right? Yeah. So the Seawall, for example, I had the idea walking around the Seawall. I was like, oh man, I would love to capture all the sounds into a piece of music that others can listen to and feel what I feel. So then I came the research. What is, like, kind of like a mind map? What is very se me fue la palabra, identifiable about the Seawall. Seagulls, crows, waves, people talking, my camera, because I take a lot of pictures there.
Yeah.
What do I feel? I feel peace. I feel serene. Okay, I want to be able to put those feelings into music or into sound. Sometimes I go to the Seawall and I feel anxious. How do I express that anxiety in ways like when you listen to the seawall, it starts very nice, peaceful and serene, and then there's like a bass that enters that's like offbeat a little bit. That's the anxiety, but then that bass comes down towards the end, and there's this theme that's always coming over and over again. That theme is me in the seawall. It starts peaceful and serene. It gets a little anxious, and then it comes back to peace. Like kind of just putting all those themes down, and then okay, what instruments do I want to use for this? I wanted to use like a glockenspiel and like a celeste to show that like little glockenspiel. And for if people that don't know, it's like a marimba, I guess, or like a xylophone. And same with the celeste is like a piano that sounds like a xylophone. It has like, you know how, okay, I'm getting technical here, but you know how like a piano has mullets and it has strings, similar to that, but it doesn't have, the celeste doesn't have the hold of the piano, and it also doesn't have the dynamic range of the piano.
Okay.
So I wanted to use those sounds, but I also wanted to use like a very synthy bass, and I wanted to use like strings because I play the violin and I love strings. So, okay, identifying those things, then looking for references of people that have done similar things to me, and then okay, I started the composition process. Like, okay, what's the theme that I want? How do I want this piece to go from peace to anxiety to peace again? And do I want the waves to be like a drone sound that is in the whole thing, or do I just want the waves in a particular time? So all those things, and then as I start to sit down and actually make the music, then I think all those things fall into place better because I can kind of see the structure of what I'm making.
Yeah.
And yeah, then the piece is done. I give it a few passes. I fix some things, export again, listen to it on my AirPods, listen to it on my phone, in the car, all those things. And then once I like it and I know that it's good, and it's as good as it's going to be, then I post it. And it's my first like song that I actually put. I've written loads of music, but it's the first piece that I actually put on like Spotify for the world to listen to. And the plan is to keep doing that and to not just do some of the things that I've already done, but also do some new things.
Right.
But yeah, I think if I had to like break it down into segments or sections, it would be, okay, I have the idea, then research, then I don't know how to call it, like mind map or I guess brainstorming. Then implementation. I think brainstorming and implementation are a bit of a cycle that eventually you have to get out of, but it keeps going over and over again.
Yeah.
And then completion, and then putting it out in the world.
Right. Thinking about our 10,000 hour episode, do you seek like input at any point of this or no?
It depends. Like for the seawall, I didn't, just because I feel like it depends on what kind of things I'm trying to do. Like when one of the projects that I'm trying to get across the finish line is actually and I haven't really talked about, I've teased this, but I haven't really talked about this with the people. I have in my heart to write 6 different movements of music to the book of Revelation, which if you read the book of Revelation in the Bible, it has so much imagery and it's such a rich book to like get concepts from for like literature and for music and for many other different things. And in fact, a lot of fantasy books have like some clear inspiration from the book of Revelation, I would say. So anyways, and for that, I'm seeking feedback because I'm trying to get it to like the level, like a really good level where I can get funding from the government and actually do like an installation for that. But when I do something when I do something because I want to get it done, I feel like feedback stops me, you know? And I love feedback. I value feedback. I live my life on feedback, you know? When there's a lot of things, and you know this because I've asked for feedback from you a million times. I need people's inputs to be able to get things done sometimes. But if I get stuck in that, then I feel like it's never going to be perfect, you know? So if I just want to write something for me, then I am the feedback. You know? If I like it and I'm good, like with the seawall, I wrote the whole thing in 2 days. And then, of course, the idea had been ruminating in my mind for a long time. Every time I went out to the seawall, I thought about it, and it just kind of, it was there. And then I showed it to my husband. I think I showed it to you before I put it out, and then I put it up on DistroKid to get on Spotify and stuff. And then it was that, because I felt like if I started seeking for feedback, I would always get notes, which is great. I love the notes and I want to improve. But I wasn't gonna get across the finish line. And I just wanted the satisfaction of getting it across the finish line, and I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it. You know, I know that it wasn't gonna be the most perfect piece I've done. I've done better things. And I will continue to do better things, hopefully. But it's the thing I'm proud of, to say, okay, I have something on Spotify that I created from beginning to end, and it's up there, and you can listen to it if you want to, and feel what I wanted you to feel, you know, or not. That's up to you. But like my job here is done.
Totally.
You know.
Totally. I think in terms of my process, it's I I think I do. I love decision trees as tools. Um, I don't always write them down, but they live
They
in
live
my
here.
head. Yeah, they live here. So every time I get an idea, not every time, that'd be too much. But I mean, there are some ideas, honestly, and I need to get better at this because I'm trying to get better at capturing them and writing them down. I've been using Notion over the past couple years, and that's where I capture a lot of my ideas. Because as much as I like to be, this free blue sky thinking creative soul, I'm also very organized, and so I have my different. I don't know what you call them on Notion. Is it pages? Databases. Okay. So I have like my writing database, my project database, my whatever database,
Yeah.
my, grad school, whatever it is. So I have my different things. And
Live
so
wiki.
Yes, exactly. So if I, get an idea that's like more of a written one, I'll put it there. So at least they're kind of categorized. They just come in random bursts as I go through my day, but they're categorized once I transport them to like some sort of medium, not paper, but you know what I mean. And then some of them, and the reason why I was also asking, like, if you actually go back to your notes and this is because, like, I don't. I have to do a way better job at, like, actually going down because my list for, like, say something like blog pieces or even book ideas or short story ideas, they're massive and they're long. The reason why I'm liking Notion a lot on a very like more practical and technical level is because you can write jot down a few notes.
Yeah.
So like I open a page and if like say it's an idea for a poem, sometimes I might have like a stanza or two, but I don't have the full poem. So like, but at least I'll like get down what I do have.
Yeah.
I can write a couple of like words whatnot, and of course like different apps have different, but what I like about Notion is of course I can open it in my computer.
And sorry to
phone.
interject too, but another thing that Notion has that's awesome is that you can do a page within page within page within page.
Yes.
So like if you wanted to do like a collection of poems,
Yeah.
and you notice a theme, you can
Yeah.
make the page, say the theme is nostalgia.
Yeah.
You can make the page called nostalgia, and then you can make sub pages and sub pages for like for all
Totally,
of the
and
different
add
poems.
and add, like
add-
tags or
yeah.
whatever. Yeah, and that's the case. Like for example, one of my book, like one of the ideas that I have for a book is like an anthology, and so it's like it's just under that database, but then within it, it's like whatever would go into the anthology. So anyway, yeah, I think like the first thing I do if I get the idea and if I remember I have my phone close by or whatnot is to put it down somewhere. So at least it exists somewhere. I will revisit them at some point. But sometimes I don't. And I will say I've lost many ideas, but some ideas persist very much in your head and they start forming in my head even without me writing down, because sometimes what happens is like I'll write an idea down and forget about it, and some ideas, like whether I write them down or not, they're just there.
Yeah.
They're just there, and they don't
Constant.
go. And I think that those are the ones that I tend to pursue the most, the ones that just don't leave me alone, that start getting a life of their own, again, even though it sounds mystical, but they really do. Because sometimes I'm just going about my day and then it's there, and like all of a sudden I'm thinking about nothing, just daydreaming, and it's there and it continues to build and build and build. And so those are the ones that I action on, and I think it depends on what it is. So, and that's where the decision tree comes in. So is it an idea that is best suited for a project like ours? Then I'll share it with you, and we'll probably start that back and forth. How are we going to implement it first? And then if we are, how, when, all of that good stuff. If it's an idea that's like more just suited for my project, then again, it's like how, when. Those are big questions, I think. Because like, for example, with book projects, and I think this is literally the first time I've said this out loud to the public, I'm already starting to flesh out some book ideas and to write them. But I'm like, if I start pursuing all of them, I'm never going to finish a one single book, right? But of course, like, because again, these, especially 3 ideas, they haven't left me alone. And so I've started writing all 3 of them, but I've gotten to a point with all 3 where I'm like 40 pages in, like each.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I need to actually sit down and decide now which one
Do you want to
I'm
pursue?
going to pursue till the end, and then work on the next, and then work on the next. Because I always remember this, the movie TikTok Boom, something. I think
Tick, Boom, yeah.
Tick, Tick, Boom. With Andrew Garfield, where he's like, he wrote Rent. It was like a big, oh no, it was before Rent.
Before Rent, yeah.
Before Rent.
It was Tick, Tick, Boom.
Yeah. And then someone's like, well, what do I do now? Like, I finished this. And they're just like, what do you mean? What do you do now? You write the next one and you write the
Yeah.
next one. And I think I've kind of like internalized that the life of a writer and an aspiring writer is probably that. You write the first thing and then you write the next one. So like, I will get to those other ones. But the thing is that like the three ideas are still like being built in my head and I don't want to lose them. So I still like want to capture them, but know that it'll probably be like, I have to have them on
Yeah.
hold for a little bit. But I think that my decision tree really goes.
Yeah.
And then similar to you, it's like also, okay, and if we're going to pursue within the how, it's like, do we need input from other people? Do I need funding? How many hours do I need of this? Like as someone who does work, who works full time, like in a
9 to 5.
in a 9 to 5, like
Yeah.
more traditional job. I'm like, okay, realistically speaking, I'm gonna come home. How many hours a day can I devote to this with like other commitments as well? So, and then I start getting into the nitty gritty of like how it will, like how this will happen. And again, like when do we want it to? So like one of the ideas that we have is for a product that we will hopefully be launching quite soon, coming out of Mashtia. And it's
Stay
like,
tuned.
yeah, stay tuned. And so it's like, okay, when is this going to happen? Or even if it's like a clip that we want to post, if you don't follow us on Instagram yet, you can follow us at Mashtia Co.
And TikTok.
Yeah, on TikTok, yes, as well. And on YouTube. And you can subscribe to our channel as well. That's a quick shameless plug the episode. But like if we have an idea for like one of the short clips that we post, I personally haven't had the chance to sit down and flush out a lot of these ideas because like this past few weeks and months I've been like jam-packed. But obviously they're written down.
Yeah.
And so like at some point I start to need to decide and actually get it on my calendar, schedule time, uninterrupted time where I'm gonna, if I need to script it.
Focus.
Or film it or whatever. And so I get to the nitty gritty of that and then I make it happen. And then to make it happen, as I was saying, it's the how. So like, for example, I don't have video editing skills too much. So like, if I have this idea, but then I might have to come to you and be like, hey, this is kind of what I'm envisioning, this cut or whatever. Can you like make it happen? Or if it's more of a blog piece kind of thing, then I actually sit down and be like, okay, I'm going to write it and then I'm going to have to schedule time to edit, to do probably like a second round and then post and then promote. In some way. So I think that like for me, the decision tree is a big part because although I do struggle with the execution, once I've committed to the idea, I'll probably do it.
Yeah.
But sometimes I do take a little bit more time and to figure out the mechanics of how it's gonna work, just like with the realities of day-to-day life kind of thing.
I like the practical tip, I guess, or the practical point. I think my practical point, something that I do a lot for myself, is I try to create deadlines for myself. Because I don't like the concept, but I know I understand that I thrive on it. So then I kind of gotta give in,
Yeah.
So for example, for the clips that we post on Instagram from our podcast, I like generally, like depending on how quickly we can get this turned around, I try to have as many done as possible by Wednesday. This week has been an anomaly, but generally try to have as many done as possible by Wednesday. So that's my deadline. So I have to have at least 3, if not more, done by Wednesday. And so I find a space in my days, like Tuesday, generally Monday and Tuesday, to work on that every week. And so that's kind of like a constant. And that way it helps me get things done. And same with other projects. Like I try to set the deadlines for myself because if I don't, then I'm never gonna get anything done. So it's the same thing with like my home. Like I need to clean the bathroom by this day, or I need to get this done by, like with everything. I've been using Notion. I love Notion too, but I've been using an app called TickTick, which is free, and it's like a to-do list app where you just take things off, and it's great because you can set priority and days that you need it done by, and it gives you like an Eisenhower matrix. So with the things that are urgent and important, urgent and important, important but not urgent, and neither. So you can kind of like, depending on how high priority you give it, you can kind of see where they land. And I'm sure you can do it in Notion because the cool thing about Notion is that you can customize it so much.
Yeah.
But I just didn't want to have to spend the time doing it.
Yeah.
And it helps me a lot to visualize the things that I gotta do to make things happen. And yeah,
I think one of the biggest things for sure is like having the idea, and after you choose the one that you like want to pursue it, and that's where this whole topic like the practicality of it crumbles a little bit. Is that at that point it will be really subjective. Like it will depend so much, again, what the audience and the purpose is. So like if it's for work, then you might have to go through a approval process or framework or whatnot. And so it might be a little bit out of your hands. As much as you are married to an idea and love it, like the actual execution might be a little bit of your hands. But if it's like your own personal thing, it's like it really will come down to that value system that we also talked about, and like what it is that you think is worth your energy and your time and potentially your money. Because like a lot of us know that sometimes for our own projects, while it's in the startup phase, you need to invest something in it.
Money.
And time is
So
money.
if you invest time, you're investing money anyway.
Right. So it's like, that is, again, where the practicality crumbles a little bit, because those decisions will truly come down to each individual. But I think that after that, the research process, I will say, like, and of course, like, going back to the beginning of this episode, like, if you like getting stuck in that initial phases of the project, it can be very easy to fall into a temptation to stretch that research time as much as possible.
Researching.
Yeah, I know, me too. But so that's kind of where this also be a practical tip that you were just saying can come in, where you're like, I'm gonna give myself a week or two to do research and kind of self-impose those kind of constraints, knowing that if it's something that you don't really have to submit for like a client or anything like that, those deadlines can be a little bit flexible. But if we all treat them like as inflexible as possible, like for myself, like for my writing, I love to do it. It relaxes me. It refills me. And I've really avoided setting myself those deadlines because I don't want to start feeling like pressure and force. But I know that if I do want to, like, at some point pursue the life as a writer and like submitting a book for publication, like a manuscript, I need to start doing it.
Totally.
And so I need to say, like, by December, the first draft needs to be done, or by November, whatever it is, because like, and then that's where also the part of the how comes in. As we were saying, we get to determine how many resources do we have to give this thing and this project. And so with that realistic idea in mind, we can set those, realistic deadlines again, but in order to start pushing ourselves to work towards them.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a good closing thought.
Yeah. So I think that's, I hope we kind of answered the question. I don't know.
I don't think it's a question to be answered, really. It's really personal, I think.
It is very personal. And I hope you could get a little bit of glimpse of our own journeys and the way we think, and that even the fact that we, shared our own ideas. It's like that thing where it's like, we're all truly individuals, but it truly comes down to an idea that we shared a lot about in our first episodes about knowing yourself as a creative, and like developing that creative self, and then just realizing what works for you, knowing like all the tools and the methodologies are out there for you to use, and like, using it as a tool belt and pulling the ones that you need when they need to be used, like the Eisenhower matrix, like a Gantt chart, a decision tree, like all these things are great. But at the end of the day, it's like, you as a creative works for you.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So those are our thoughts for this week's episode. We hope that we, provided something useful for you, and we'll see each other next time.
Bye.
Bye.